Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Professionals. Thank you all for joining us.
So I started in dogs, not normally like most people do, where, you had your parents who started in it. My mom was always an animal lover, and I loved animals too. We'd always, train our dogs in our living room and play around and have fun. And my mom is actually from New Jersey, and I was born in New Jersey. And every year she would go to the Westminster Kennel Club dog show. And there just so happened to be a show in Raleigh, North Carolina near us. So we decided to go, and we just so happened to get there when juniors was happening. And I told my mother that I wanted to do this. I was 7 years old at the time. So we started talking to some Boston Terrier breeders, because at the time I also had a pet Boston Terrier, not show quality at all. And we started to talk to them, and they suggested that I got an older Boston who was already trained. So that way I could focus on just training myself and not having to train a brand new puppy as well. So we ended up meeting with a Boston Terrier breeder named Stella Jowers of Terra Oaks Bostons. And she recommended that I get one of her Bostons named Melanie. And that became my show dog. I started to do handling classes, and I did that for a couple of months until I went to my first show, which I showed in the breed ring. I'm pretty sure I lost. I don't think I got anything, but it was just a really fun experience. And then, a couple of years later, I was able to enter into juniors. The first time I went into juniors, I had gotten second in my class. And then the second time I went into juniors, I won my class. And then actually 2 weeks later, we had gotten in the mail a letter stating that apparently the first place winner got disqualified in some way. So somehow I had won the class in the end. So I got like a little ribbon in the mail. And then I went on 3 years later. I decided that I wanted to start getting introduced into the sporting breeds, and I wanted to start doing some fun stuff with sporting dogs, and I was interested in one of them. So my grandparents wanted a hunting dog as well. So they decided that they were going to purchase a Brittany. We did a lot of research on breeders, and we decided to go with one dog that was 8 weeks old at the time named Dolly. And that was basically, the rest was history. I kind of continued to show Bostons, and I still do every once in a while, but I mainly focus on Brittany's at this time.
Wow, what a great start. I mean, you were so well supported. That was excellent advice from a breeder to, not start you off with puppy. Really great way to start.
Yes, definitely.
So what were some of the challenges you faced as a junior handler?
I would say one of the challenges I faced was time management. Going from being at school during the weekdays to showing on the weekends is difficult. I was also, at one point in time, I was showing, doing competitive dancing and soccer. So I would, from 8:30 in the morning till 2, go to school. From 2 o'clock to 4, I was playing soccer. From 5 to 8:30 at night, I was dancing. And then I would, for 30 minutes after that, I would train my dogs. And then after that, I would do any type of studying for school or homework that I needed to do. And I would do that Monday through Thursday. Then Friday, it was, you finish school, you get the dogs ready for the weekend. Once my parents got home, we would drive to the show, and then we do the same thing for the next week. So time management is definitely something that's tricky. I don't do soccer or competitive dance anymore, but it is something that you have to, start to kind of figure out how to get through both school and kind of just make sure that you're managing it in a good way.
Well, dog shows can certainly be very demanding on life, so that doesn't change. Were there any challenges that you faced in particular to the dog show environment while you were at shows?
I would say, I think the intimidation, honestly. I was a very shy kid. And I looked up at handlers and breeders, and I just saw them as something way better than me, and above all honesty, they started in my position too, as the scared little kid. I think, starting to grow and learn that, you can ask them questions. And if you are curious about something, just be willing to ask and don't be so afraid. I know it's really hard to just be like, just ask them, you're good. But, just having to work through that was kind of difficult because I really admired a lot of these amazing handlers. And it's kind of difficult to have to be like, I need to, ask them the questions.
Well, I think that's great. I know I was a shy child as well, but for some reason, when I really wanted something, I did manage to be very assertive. Did you have, I mean, one way to do that would be if you had an adult introduce you. Did you just walk up to a handler, or did you have someone introduce you to some of your favorite handlers, or how did you go about that?
I would say it was I probably had people that would kind of introduce me. First I'd start with, talking to some breeders, and then, the breeders would introduce me to the handlers, and I kind of, I think, slowly but surely. And then I got to the point where I was pretty confident and I was able to start walking up to handlers on my own. But in the beginning, I definitely had some help to kind of be like, you can do it, go talk.
That's great. That's great. And it's something that I see a lot of juniors can come in feeling shy, but boy, we love our dogs, and they really can help us stretch and grow in all kinds of ways. One of the questions that comes up with juniors is showing in junior showmanship versus showing in breed competition. Did you find you showed differently in junior showmanship versus in the breed?
I would say that depends on the dog I'm showing. My current special, Turbo, I show him differently in the junior ring than I do in the breed ring, but by only one thing, so to say. So with him, I find that he's a little bit more, up and ready to roll if I stand up with him rather than kneel. And in juniors, I kneel a little bit more. I just think it makes him look a little bit more structurally correct and sound if I'm standing with him. But however, in juniors, I like to kneel to kind of show that I can do different things. But I will say this, I train my dogs as if how I'm going to perform. Okay. When I was in dance, we were always taught that if you performed and trained in the studio like you did on stage, you're going to perform that same way on stage. So you want to make sure that you're training your dog the way you're going to train it at a show, and you're going to show it at a show. So I do train him to know that I can kneel or I can stand. But that's probably the only thing I really do differently. And I think depending on the dog, there are some dogs in breed that I'll kneel with, but with him in particular, I do stand with him normally in the breed.
Thank you. That's a great example. Yeah, it is having to make different decisions. I know even as a handler, I have to make different decisions as to a judge's preferences. If I see a judge that likes a lot of expression, I might spend more time free baiting instead of doing a hard stack.
Right.
What was your best show experience? Your most or most exciting win?
It's probably one of my smaller wins, but it meant so much to me. I had one. It was my first show back from my knee surgery, and I had won the breed with some pretty competitive Brittany's in the ring, and I walked in that ring. I had a fellow mentor of mine named Kristen Stout, who helped me groom Turbo and get him ready. And I came into that ring, I was just so excited. I was ready to roll. I'm like, finally, I get to do this again, after months of, not being able to walk and run. I was just so excited. And I came in that ring and I didn't care if I won or lost. And I went in that ring, I was kind of hobbling around, and I didn't care. I was just so excited. And then I won the breed and I came out of the ring and I remember giving my friends and family hugs and I just started crying. It was the first time I've ever cried at a dog show, but I just started crying and it was like a relief. I just finally felt like I've been working so hard for so long to try to get back to normal. And it was just that like, oh, I'm finally here again. I'm finally to this point that I can actually do something that I love again, you know? And that was probably my most like special win to myself. I've had some really big wins, like the top 20 wins were really big, you know, retiring the trophy, but that one meant the most to me, I think.
Well, yeah, definitely, because it was so emotional. And I
Right.
find as a handler, when you go in the ring, you have to check that at the gate when you go in. And then sometimes when the moment is over, I will sometimes find there's a whole lot going on that I didn't even know because I checked it at the gate. So it
Right.
sounds like you had that experience where everything that you checked at the gate was there waiting to celebrate with you when you came out. That's nice.
Yeah, it was definitely an emotional roller coaster those couple months that I was going through all that, and I was just so excited to be back.
Nice. What what was your worst experience?
My worst experience was probably my knee surgery, honestly. Um, it was the week after our Brittany Nationals, and I had had 4 dislocations before my knee surgery, and they were to the point where the doctors were basically like, I think it's in the best interest to get your tendon reconstructed and have surgery. But I wanted to go to the Brittany Nationals because I've never gone to a Nationals before. I said, I'm okay, we're going to the Nationals. The week after, I'll have this surgery. So I went to the Nationals. I was showing Dolly at the time, and I had won Award of Merit. Came home. It was the day before Thanksgiving. I had my knee surgery. I came out of the knee surgery perfectly fine. You know, using my crutches perfect. I felt awesome. I went and had Chick-fil-A right after. I'm like, this is great. I'm gonna get through. The doctor said I'd be able to walk the week after my surgery, and then I'd be able to get back to fully showing dogs and, you know, being a normal after 3 months. But I ended up the day after my surgery, I was unable to lift my toes off the ground. And I was unable to do that for about a month. And then I was finally, by the 2nd month, I was able to walk slightly, hobbling, I'll call it. And then by my 4th month, I was finally able to somewhat run. But at 6 months, I was completely free of physical therapy. But I would say it probably took me about a year to like fully be able to do everything. Like I still can't kneel all the way. I can't lean back super far, but I can get on the ground. And it opened my eyes so much. Like that whole experience, you know, not being able to go up steps alone, not being able to really walk for a long time, and just realizing how much I had missed about dog showing. I remember the week of Royal Canin, you know, I would get messages from people saying, you know, oh, we lost today, and you know, I don't know if I would have put up the dog that won. And I just remember one night I was crying in my bed because I just remember being like, what I would do right now just to lose, just to be there and lose. Like I mean, it was just such a bad experience that whole time, but you know, it really opened my eyes. And I think, you know, everything happens for a reason. And I think it really made me so grateful for everything.
Certainly gives you a new perspective. We do have a question in the chat box, so thank you for posting this. So there's a question from Andrea, I believe, and Andrea's question is that she's been asked to show a class bitch by a close friend and also shows her champion dog who is the same breed. She's the only one in her family who shows. What should she do if the bitch gets winner's bitch and has to show both in the breed ring?
Yeah. I would recommend finding someone, maybe another junior or a close friend that also shows, that could help you out. Normally what I do when I have a class dog and I have a special is I will try to find someone before and be like, hey, I've got this class dog. It may or may not win, but can you be on standby? And that's what I normally do. And normally they're pretty okay with it. Just be like, here's what I would recommend doing with this dog. Just kind of give them the lay down, maybe the leash needs to be on top. Maybe the dog's a little bit playful, or maybe it's a puppy and you're just like, just go have fun with the dog. Like, just let the dog have fun. And that's what I would recommend doing. Just asking people before and just kind of be like, hey, can you be on standby just in case?
And that's a great answer. And it's great that you're so prepared. I see many people at the show that suddenly are surprised when they won and now they don't know what to do and how to get a dog into the ring. So whenever you are at a show, you should have a plan for if every one of your dog wins. And that being said too, if it were me and someone had asked me, I would also, again, be very specific in the beginning to say, I do have my dog in the breed. So if your female wins, then I will find someone else to take her in, just so everybody understands. And, as Paige said, being able to have the person that's going to be showing the dog be prepared and have a general understanding of that dog's needs is great advice. We have a question from Grace. What would you do if you had to be in the breed ring with one breed and in juniors with another dog at the same time?
I think that just depends on what you want to show in more, honestly. It can be challenging, definitely. I've gone through that experience before. For me, I always choose breed over juniors. But if you're, maybe you're trying to qualify for Royal Canin or Westminster, maybe you want to go for juniors. I think that really just depends on what you want to do. Just maybe have your mom or your dad on standby holding the dog at that ring so that if you need to, you can quickly go to that ring. Also, if there's a lot of juniors in your class, you can say to the steward, hey, I might run in a little bit late. I'm showing in the breed, and you can quickly get to that ring and just be like, okay, I'm here. Here's my number. Make sure you have your number before. And that way you're able to easily get into that ring.
I love how prepared you are. Excellent. What was the most challenging dog you've ever had to show?
My first Brittany. It was the first dog I've ever trained all by myself, but this dog was wild. Just very wired, not exactly what I expected the Brittany's to be. Very wired dog and just full of energy. I had to really hone in on her, and every night I had to practice with this dog and consistently make sure that I was on top of everything that needed to be done. And it's funny because we named Turbo after that because we thought he was going to be this wild puppy when we got him. And he ended up being the polar opposite. He ended up being this super, laid back, easygoing dog. But Dolly was wild, and she could do almost anything though. That was an amazing part about her, is that she was just so versatile. I mean, I did dock diving, lure coursing, trick dog, hunt tests with her. She was just so versatile and willing to do anything. You just had to kind of get her under control and tell her, this is what you need to do. And then she would do it well. But she really made me fall in love with the breed. Like, as wild as she was, I loved her, and I loved every part of her. But she was wild. She was really wild.
Have you worked for any professional handlers?
Yes, I have worked for Casey Von Engel. She's mainly known for her Bernese Mountain Dogs and Golden Retrievers. I have known Casey for so long, as long as I can remember. I think we met when I was showing Dolly, I think right in the very beginning when I was showing Dolly. And, we've just gotten so close over the years. And she helped me when one time that I had a knee issue. She helped show one of my dogs for me. And we've just become really close. My goal is to start working with some more handlers, maybe after I age out a little bit, and just kind of get some more experience. But she's an incredible person to work for, and I'm just so happy to have her in my life.
That's great. So speaking of your future, do you have thoughts of becoming a professional handler someday?
I've thought about it. I don't know if I want to do it just yet. I can't decide. My plan is to go to college, definitely. And I'd like to become a reproductive veterinarian is my goal. But I think if something was to come up or maybe I was given an opportunity, I think I would probably take it to be a professional handler, but I would have to make sure that I got through college first. So I have a backup plan. I'm very prepared. That's the key part. Always be prepared.
Absolutely. I've figured that out about you. I like that. What advice would you give to juniors just getting started?
I would say watch other handlers, watch juniors that you admire. When I was younger, I used to love to watch the group ring. And what I would do is I wouldn't even watch the dogs. I would just watch the handlers and watch how one handler can go from showing a Doberman to showing a golden, and just see how they work with different dogs with different temperaments too. Watch how they work with a dog that's, very high energy to a dog that, maybe is a little bit timid and shy. I was always fascinated by that. I also loved watching juniors that were older, the veteran juniors, so to say, because they had a lot of little things that they do that can make their style unique. And I think that's really interesting. And I would just recommend watching people, asking them questions. It's scary, but, they started in your spot too. So just ask some questions too.
So have you had older juniors? Did you ask older juniors for help at times?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was times where I would have a question or, maybe I was interested in something that they would always do. Like there's some things that, like for me, I always, present the head a certain way. When I start moving, I always look back at the judge before I go. Just little things that they would do. And you can ask them, hey, what's your reasoning for doing this? There was one professional handler that there was a whole bunch of knots in its lead. And every single dog had a knot in its lead. And I was like, what is the reason for these knots? So I ended up, he was in the ring and I'm like, hey, what is the reason for all the knots in the lead? Are you able to control the length of your lead? I thought it was a genius question. And he's like, no, there's just knots in the lead. But at least I asked the question. That's the point of the story, is at least I asked the question so I know the answer. But there's no reason for knots in the lead, apparently. I thought it was great.
Some people tie knots in their leads for their best in shows.
Yeah.
So it can be, any, or sometimes you just can't get the knots undone. That's funny. How have you felt about being given advice? Did you ever find, especially that you were younger or even now, about people giving advice?
I love advice. I think, in this sport, you have to kind of take as much knowledge as you can from people who have had experience. That's how everything works in this is you have to learn from people who have experienced things because that's how they learned as well. I think, always take advice, even if you're not going to use it, just have it in the back of your head because you never know when you're going to have a dog that you may need to use that certain type of technique on. And just to know that you have that in your arsenal is really great.
I love that word. That's great. In your arsenal. Woman after my own heart. What do you feel are the attributes of a great handler?
I think someone who is soft. I think soft-handed is very important. I think, I always say that, handlers, we have to remember what we are. We're handlers and we have to be the hands behind the dog. We're not the focal point. our dog is the focal point. And it's really hard in juniors to not be the focal point because it is kind of about us. But I think handlers that just kind of disappear behind their dog, but still present their dog to an absolute stunning presentation. And people who can handle different dogs and again, different temperaments, I think those are really good handlers that know how to handle a scared dog and a very high energy dog, and even handling different breeds. I think grooming is another thing that makes a really good handler. Handlers that know how to groom like different breeds is crazy. Terriers, I don't know how they do it. Terriers, that's an incredible, I mean, you have to have so much talent to groom that type of breed.
Yeah, for sure. Do you ever get nervous?
Yeah, and it's funny because when I was younger, what I would do to kind of relax my nerves is I would sing a song in my head. It sounds crazy, but I would sing a song in my head and I would just kind of, go through the motions and just kind of sing. And while I'm showing, I'm singing in my head, and it worked for a long time and it helped me. I don't get as much, I'm not as nervous as I used to be. I think, once you kind of, you get used to losing, you get used to winning, and it's kind of like there's no, you lose or you win, and that's just basically it, and then you kind of start to be like, okay, this is not that bad. But there are times I've stepped into a ring that I'm a little bit nervous for sure. But that's what I used to do when I was younger. I also used to, and this is because of my dancing background, I used to count. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like dance counting basically. That's what I used to do when I was really young. And that helped me a lot. So I used to be very nervous when I would go into a ring, but now it's not as bad, but it does happen sometimes. But I don't normally sing anymore.
Those are great answers, and I'm going to put them in my arsenal as well because I like the idea. The singing is very relaxing, and numbers are left brain, which gets you into logical thinking and out of right brain emotional thinking. So that sounds
Right.
pretty neat too. I like it.
Yeah. I've also heard, which this could be completely wrong, there's probably no science on this, but someone told me for school that if you blow on your thumb, that can help cool your nerves. I don't know if that's true. I've used it a couple of times.
Just gonna try
I'm not
that.
gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I've tried it a couple of times. I think it works, but I'm not sure. So don't quote me on that one, maybe. But yeah, that's what I used to do. And even if, plug your earbuds in just for a little bit before you go into the ring, it really helps calm you down.
Great. Do you ever have a hard time focusing?
Like on the shows or like?
Yeah, do you ever have, is that ever a challenge for you? You don't sound like that's a challenge for you, but for some people being focused is a challenge, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of goes back to your time management thing. I think maybe in the beginning, and honestly during COVID, I probably haven't been the best about focusing on things. I think, knowing when you need to do schoolwork and when you need to do dog showing is really important. Kind of, giving yourself, maybe setting a timer for like 30 minutes to work on schoolwork, giving yourself another 30 minutes just to work on, maybe training your dog, and kind of taking little breaks in between can help with your focus. And that's what I would probably recommend, is just setting a timer, just solely focusing on this for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you need, and then do something you enjoy doing for another 30 minutes, again setting that timer, so you have to end it. And there's a lot of great apps on phones where you can use, I know there's like an online school timer, that's what I use. I also have there's an app, it's a school tracker, so you can put your assignments into it for each class, and that can also help keep you on track, especially for this online time where we're doing everything virtually.
Great, thank you. Have you ever worked with, or what would you recommend in working with a dog that gets bored easily?
I would recommend teaching your dog tricks. Turbo can sometimes get bored, and what I have found is keeping him entertained with other things helps a lot. I normally, once my puppies are very well trained, I would say around like the 6 month mark, I start training almost only trick training and just doing, little high fives, maybe making them spin and just little things like that. You can teach them obedience at that point and start doing some different things so that they kind of don't know what to expect and it makes it a little bit more exciting. I recommend little tricks that you can do in the ring. There'll be times where, maybe you're waiting for your turn and you can kind of get your dog to sit, give them a high five, just to keep them kind of engaged. Also, catch is another good one you can teach. That's pretty good. I would recommend maybe not doing that one in juniors because sometimes judges are a little bit iffy about throwing bait and they might consider that throwing bait.
Thank you. So another question from Abby asking if you homeschool or if you're going to school during the week.
So during the pandemic, I have been virtual and online the whole time. But normally I am a full-time high school student going to school every single day.
Hopefully you will be that again.
Yes, definitely.
Do you have any recommendations for what to do with a dog that is insecure and lacking confidence?
I would recommend experience, starting small. Actually, I had this issue with Turbo. Turbo was a very low confidence dog when I got him, and I had to really work hard to get him to the where he is now. He was a little bit fearful of people, and he was a little bit afraid of judges. So I had to start with what I felt worked the best for him. We noticed that he was a little bit more fearful of male judges than he was of females. So we started with, more petite females, and we would work with those judges. I would also ask, any of my friends if they would examine my dog before I went in the ring. Taking your dog to handling class, I know sometimes that isn't exactly the same, but it can also help. And that kind of worked too as well. I also found that just being consistent is very key. Again, tricks can also help build a dog's confidence because they feel like, yeah, I know what I'm doing and I'm having fun. That can kind of get their mind off of things. But I would definitely say being consistent, and just keep working, just keep working. I know there's so many times where I was just like, I don't know if he's getting anywhere. And if you just keep working through it, you'll start to see improvement. And also, I would recommend bringing a confident dog that's kind of their friend to the shows too, if they're afraid of shows, so that they have a confident dog to kind of feed off of their energy. That was another thing I did with my dogs too, is I always bring them in together so that they have that confidence to feed off of, and that normally makes them a little bit more confident.
Yeah, great recommendations. Have a question from Elliot. Hi, Elliot. Elliot has a new puppy and he asks what you recommend doing for a high energy puppy in the ring. I think his puppy is 7 months.
I would recommend, again, I'm a big advocate for trick training and just, little tricks that you can do, keeping them focused, keeping them engaged. I know how it feels to have a very high energy puppy. I've been there. But just keeping them engaged, keeping them focused, doing little things with them to keep them just engaged and focused is really important. Maybe, start working on, I know one of the things I had an issue with was my dog staying for long periods of time. It took a long time to work through that. So just kind of starting with, 5 seconds, then working to 10 seconds, then working to a minute, and slowly, gradually working better. Also, depending on the age of your puppy, obviously some puppies at a mental stage will not be able to hold, a stack as long as, a 5-year-old dog. But I would recommend, just trying to keep their focus, and also being very calm when showing them. If you're really amped up, it's going to make them very amped up. So just kind of, everything, good job, way to go, instead of being like, yes, good boy. And that would probably be more what I would do with a fearful dog. I'd be like, you're such a good dog, way to go, but with a very high energy dog that maybe already pretty amped up, just be like, good, yes, because they're going to take it the same as if you were very excited.
Great answer. And that is a great suggestion too, as you were saying, with your tone of voice, when you have a super excited dog, keeping yourself super calm. And I always think of myself as a sponge trying to just soak up some of that intensity, because sometimes, the dogs, it's like they can't help themselves. They're just so excited. So I try to just alleviate some of that for them, which it sounds like.
And it can be hard, especially when you're going from, a very, soft, calm dog. And then, you go into the next ring and you're showing a very high energy dog. You have to quickly change your personality almost to make sure that you're able to perform just as good with that dog.
Do you have any advice for juniors during COVID? Some juniors that still don't have shows coming up, as to what they can be doing in the meantime until shows pick back up.
Yeah, I would say, practice, practice your grooming, maybe message a couple of your breeder mentors or professional handler mentors. I know one of the things I did was I messaged a professional handler who showed Brittany's, and I asked her, hey, can you give me some grooming tips? And she sent me a couple of videos on some of the grooming stuff she did. And we were able to actually meet up a little bit later, a couple months later after that, and get in contact and, actually physically do it and work on the grooming. And I think, just polishing up on things, watching a lot of, you can watch reruns of Westminster and Rural Canaan, and you can get ideas of how other people handle. I know that on YouTube, they have Westminster breed judging. So maybe if you're interested in the Brittany breed and that's your breed, you can watch all those handlers and see how they handle. They also have juniors on there, I believe, too, and you can watch the group judging as well. And that's probably what I would do. And training too, keep working on training, grooming, and just polishing up on your skills, I would say.
Do you have a process when you go to a new show site?
Yeah, normally we take our camper. I will get to the show. We set up our X pens, we set up grooming. And I normally, before I go to the show, I do the majority of my trimming and bathing. I normally bathe before I go, just because we have to leave pretty late normally because of school and because of work. And then I will, wake up in the morning that next day. I will get my suit on and everything I need. And then I groom my dogs. And then I get to the ring. Again, I'm always early and always prepared normally. And then I just go in. That's pretty much my system, I would say.
What is your support system like? Do you have a good support system with people around you?
Yes, definitely. So my parents come to the show, my grandparents come to the show, and then I have all of my show friends as well. I have a great support system and I love them so much. You can see my dogs running across the screen. So yeah, my family is so supportive and they've always been that way. My grandparents come all the time. This last weekend was actually their first show, being able to come back from COVID. And my family is just so supportive and they come to as many shows as possible. And I'm very grateful for them.
That's great. And it definitely helps you be stronger when you have a great support system.
Yes.
We have a question from Grace. What would you recommend for dogs that like to jump, like terrier breeds?
I would say, this is going to sound crazy, but I would say train them to jump. Okay. Hear me out. So teach them a command that is very easily spotted for them. So, maybe if I was teaching jump, you could put your hand out like this. So they know that's that. Okay. And also teach them the off command as well. So make sure that's very easily focused so that they know exactly what that is. So like for me, for sit, I always teach sit to push back so that they can't get it confused with stack, because so many people are against teaching their dog sit. It's just the matter of the way that you train it, So teach the dog. I would recommend teaching the dog to jump And then also teaching the dog to sit so that it knows that if you do this, it can jump. But if it doesn't, then it can't do it, you know, and teaching it, you know, all 4 feet on the ground.
Well, I think that's brilliant training, because it removes resistance, and it's a
Right.
way to allow a dog to get something out, to give it an outlet, instead of just, no, 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 no. So that is
Right.
brilliant. Love it.
And you can, you know, if you're waiting sidelines, you can let it jump, you know, do the command, let it do it, you know, and then reward it. But just so it knows this is the time I can do it, and this is the time when I cannot do it.
I want to thank Paige so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure, and you're just a wealth of information.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I want to let anyone who is joining for the first time, for you to know that you can check out other previous Meet the Professional webinars at, if you go onto YouTube and check out Win All Coaching LLC. We have, I think, 6 or 7 different Meet the Professionals and different questions. So if you're interested, check that out. That would be great. I want to thank you all. I hope we all have some shows coming up, and we're all going to get busier. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you so much, Paige.
Thank you. And if you guys ever have any questions and you see me at a show, you can always come up to me. Feel free to ask me any questions or need any advice. I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Paige.